Hello and welcome to this edition of Indian Education Outlook, where we have a special guest as part of our series on unusual courses that you can follow, what the future is for them. I'm delighted to introduce Professor Varadesh Hiregange, Director, Gandhian Center for Philosophical Arts and Sciences, Manipal Academy of Higher Education. Very warm welcome to you, sir. And I really hope that we can have a very interesting conversation once we think. Dr. Hiregange, let me start the thing with the first question. What exactly is taught in this course of yours? What are the main elements of this course that you have?
Thank you, Ramananji, first of all. Let me briefly introduce what exactly our department has been doing. In fact, Gandhian Studies was part of Manipal Academy of Higher Education since 2009. And as a department, it was set up in 2014, December 14th. And afterwards, the mandate was primarily to organize seminars, symposia, workshops, and offering courses, primarily to sensitize students to Gandhian thought. But here, of course, we have been doing all this. We have been organizing series of lectures, and we have also offered evening certificate program, primarily open for everyone, those who are interested in Gandhian. So it has been going on, and here again Mahatma Gandhi. So he is being explored in all dimensions. It is not just a political Gandhi, but Gandhi as a journalist, Gandhian aesthetics, Gandhian philosophy and politics, Gandhian educational philosophy, Gandhian economics. So Gandhi is being explored in all his dimensions. So that is something special about this department. MA in Ecosophical Aesthetics. We have also called our department as Gandhian Center for Philosophical Arts and Sciences, in fact, primarily to broad-base its academic activities. So they are primarily sensitized to different forms of arts, and philosophy and ecosophy, which combines philosophy and ecology. These two areas will also lend certain depth for appreciation of art forms. And students should be essentially prepared to appreciate these art forms and should be able to write about it. So in this sense, I would describe this as some kind of a course which prepares art writers. Of course, alternatively, we can also call them as art journalists, art critics, which is also, in fact, a need of the industry. So today, so we don't find many art writers, art critics in industry. So it's also a need of the industry that we need to have experts with this expertise in this area. So ecosophy is also a very significant course going by the contemporary situation. So ecosophical aesthetics combines all these areas. And the other program, MA in Art and Studies. So there are commonalities between the two programs. Art, in fact, is the connecting thread. Philosophy is the connecting thread, which, in fact, gives certain depth to both the postgraduate programs. But here, in case of peace studies, the focus primarily is on social sciences. So if in ecosophical aesthetics, the focus is primarily on humanities and liberal arts, in case of peace studies, art and peace studies, focus is primarily on social sciences. So here we get into society and polity, Gandhian studies, gender studies, development studies, and of course international relations and philosophical basis of peace studies. So we get into all these. They are primarily shaped in order to meet certain contemporary needs of our society. Yeah.
Hmm. I was just trying to, sir, connect, Gandhi with art. I'm not quite sure what Gandhian art would be.
Our center is also called Gandhian Center for Philosophical Arts and Sciences. In fact, we also have a paper on history of sciences, and hence it is quite
Hmm.
interdisciplinary in nature. And as I mentioned in the beginning, in this department, we are also exploring Gandhi in all his dimensions. And Gandhi, in that sense, is a philosopher. So I would also call him as one of the early philosophers of this age. And his very remarkable remark on nature provides enough for everybody's need, for everybody's greed. That forms the
Hmm.
philosophical basis of the entire environmental struggle. Gandhi was very fond of music, apparently.
Hmm.
And it's not just about Gandhi. So, as I mentioned, the spirit is Gandhi. We have certainly expanded its scope, and Tagore is also very much part of the program. So, I would always say when I talk about Gandhi and Tagore, Gandhi, in case of Gandhi, perhaps the emphasis was more on ethics, not that aesthetics. But in case of Tagore, uh, emphasis was more on aesthetics. So that way, we combine both Gandhi and Tagore program, and we have expanded the scope. And in case of arts,
Uh-huh.
arts are also looked at from philosophical point of view. Arts are also looked at from ecosophical point. So in that sense,
Okay.
Gandhi,
Okay.
Gandhi becomes an important worldview, perspective for all art forms which students learn, be it music, theatre, dance, cinema, visual arts,
Right.
etc. Yeah,
Right. Okay, sir, if I could ask a personal question, what made you
yeah,
interested in Gandhi? What drove you to sort of, this
yeah,
kind of a role of trying to teach,
yeah,
Gandhian
yeah, yeah,
philosophy and
yeah.
economics? So,
I was a journalist, as you know, earlier, and
hmm.
for some time I was also heading a communication
Hmm.
journalism institute, and Gandhi was also a journalist in that sense. So he was editor of uh, Young India, Indian Opinion, Harijan. But at the same time, over a period of time, Gandhi also has rather drawn me towards
Uh-huh.
for the contemporaneity of his thought. As I mentioned, today
Hmm.
uh, we do face two significant crises in our time. One is the crisis of ecology, ecological crisis, and the other one is the crisis of violence. So, in both these areas, Gandhi seems quite significant. I'm, of course, also interested in different forms of art. So, my idea is to connect all these areas. So, how we can make a Gandhian philosophy relevant for our times, especially making use of different art forms to face these twin problems of ecological
Uh-huh.
crisis and violence. Yeah,
Okay. Okay. But sir, another sort of a question that I was always curious about
yeah,
is that, when people nowadays people talk about sort of extrapolating a particular thing. Let's say if you're a biologist and you
yeah.
also know engineering, how can you
Okay,
mesh the two together? What are the kind of other sort of roles in which you can mesh Gandhian studies?
okay, okay. In fact, Gandhi could be relevant in almost all areas. In that sense, he was some sort of a overarching philosopher. Today, we do speak in terms of Gandhian economics. We can speak in terms of Gandhian journalism. And in case of education, Gandhian thought of Naitalim, his notion of basic education, his notion of 3H, uh, hand, head, and heart, focusing on 3H. So that is extremely relevant. Of course, in politics, in social work, in social service. So in all these areas, Gandhi is quite significant. And Gandhi did have something to say on everything, including science. And of course, Gandhi also wanted science to have a conscience. And of course, all disciplines, he wanted to have some kind of a conscience for all disciplines. So, in that sense, today it is not just I, but at the same time, all over the world, Gandhi is being studied. Perhaps, of course, quite a few universities in India, they have Gandhian Studies departments, and in many other countries, be it in Europe, United States, in Africa, in many of these countries, there are Gandhian Studies departments. At the same time, there is an attempt to revisit Gandhi
Uh-huh.
in all these areas, uh, and perhaps he is one ecosopher, I would say, uh, um, who is extremely diligently being studied and also being, at least there has been an attempt to practice in many walks of life.
Sir, but sir, there is an argument which says that Gandhi may have been right during his time, but he's becoming
Yeah.
increasingly irrelevant in the modern order. So how would you
Okay.
react to that? I mean, are his teachings more relevant now, or have they sort of started sort of losing relevance?
Yeah. I would say his teachings are becoming more and more relevant today. If we call them as teachings, I would call them as Gandhian thought. And many of the world leaders, they are inspired by Gandhi all over the world. His name is being cited, and his name is being cited as the hope of the future. And as I mentioned earlier, once again, so in a world which is increasingly becoming violent, in a world which is facing problems of climate change, of global warming, of ozone layer depletion, deforestation, of social injustice, uh, that he seems to be becoming extremely relevant.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
There is also an argument, sir, that Gandhi's ideas were mainly focused on rural India rather than sort of a an urbanized India which we have now. How
Yeah.
valid is that argument?
Yeah. Gandhian thought, Gandhian philosophy, in that sense, was much more holistic. So, if there is one key word which I quite often cite, that is the notion of Sarvodaya, that is well-being of everyone. So, it includes both urban as well as rural civilizations. It is not just rural. But he had a different worldview. And in fact, in his In Swaraj, he delineates his worldview, which is in fact critique of certain problems of modernity, But at the same time, as you know, he was also influenced by three moderns, we call them as three moderns. One was Tolstoy, the other one was John Ruskin, and of
Mhm.
course, in Indian tradition, by Bhagavad Gita, by Buddha, etc. So, Sarvodaya, in fact, was a term he develops after he reads John Ruskin's last. So, in his notion of Sarvodaya, uh, everyone will have uh, an opportunity to live a decent life, will have employment, will have education, will have all the basic necessities of life. Uh, and in that sense, he doesn't make a distinction between urban and rural areas. But yes, he was quite concerned that urban civilization is just eating away rural civilization. So he did not want that balance. He did not want rural India to suffer, and that's why his notion of Gram Swaraj, every village becomes self-sufficient. So his only concern was cities should not grow at the expense of villages.
Mhm.
Villages have the right to life, and decent life is possible in villages, which is uh, in fact quite that's eco-friendly. Even at that time, perhaps he did not use that word, but as I mentioned, his basic philosophy uh, of nature provides enough for everybody's need, but not for everybody's greed. I think underlines this thought. Urban centers should not uh, affect rural. They should not eat away rural civilization.
Uh-huh. But sir, there is also a train of thought which says that if Gandhi were to be born today, he may
Yeah,
not have been able to come back with that same sort of a non-violent theory simply because the
okay.
conditions have changed dramatically.
Yeah, yeah,
So would you
yeah.
argue with that, or would you like to
Sure. No, in fact, not that Gandhi was not aware of violent means, because during his lifetime itself, there were world wars, and there were many others who advocated violence to achieve their objective. But he was also trying to do something else. He did not want to take up that path because uh, that was a beaten track, which did not yield the kind of results which Gandhi was really aspiring to achieve. He wanted to experiment with something else, and hence the path of non-violence. So, uh, even in today's world, I don't think he would have given up his non-violence if he were to be alive. But in case of Gandhian non-violence, as many psychologists have also recognized, it was sort of a militant non-violence. So it could be some sort of a contradiction. It may appear to be a contradiction in terms, a kind of a militant non-violence in the sense there was some kind of urgency in doing his work. Uh, so he would have certainly continued with his non-violent means uh,
mhm,
movement of education, and because for him means were rather more important than ends. Means were as important, more important than. So how you do it rather than what you say. Most of the social movements, environmental struggles, so they have been not violent today. and do take Gandhi's name, swear by Gandhi's name, many of the dictators. And yeah, uh, so they have also achieved a success, at least to a reasonable extent.
When we think of Gandhi and his and the people who sort of the big names who sort of used his philosophy, we think of Nelson
Yeah,
Mandela, Martin Luther King, and a few others.
yeah.
Can you think of somebody who's still alive right now, who's known as a big leader who sort of preaches the Gandhian philosophy? Any world leader that you can think of?
All major world leaders do respect Gandhi in that sense. But in case of India, perhaps I would say Gandhian spirit is alive in many of the struggles. And I would perhaps cite Narmada Bachao Andolan and Medha Patkar. Her agitation has remained non-violent and Gandhian, and she has also made significant points. Say, she has raised most fundamental questions about the kind of development we have, be it the notion of massive indiscriminate industrialization or placement of Adivasis for the sake of development. I think two fundamental questions she has raised: whose development are we talking about, and development at what cost? And that agitation, whatever success it has achieved or not achieved, but has raised most significant issues which need to be revisited during our times.
Okay, sir, coming back to your course, I mean, we have discussed Gandhi as such, but coming back to your course in Manipal, have you
Yeah.
seen a sort of a rise in the number of students who are coming, or has there been a decline, or and what kind of numbers are you getting for? I mean, I don't want specific numbers, but an idea of whether you're getting a lot of students showing interest, or whether that interest is slowly dwindling.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, we have started these courses with a purpose. So, as I said, we have made this quite interdisciplinary in nature. Philosophy and art connect these courses. Ecology, significant focus for contemporary times, our basic, and three, in these courses where a lot of interest has been shown from all across the globe, I must say. So when we announced, so there were inquiries from all parts of the globe, and many said that they would like to study if the course were to be online.
Hmm.
But at this point, we are not offering these programs online at this point. So it
Right.
may happen in future, not at this point. And later, of course, we do have a modest student strength. And this year also, there have been quite a few inquiries. And of course, we have modest batch of lovely students. Uh, and I think we have taken the first step in that
Uh-huh.
direction. And yeah,
But sir, there is also an argument which says that the millennials, the younger people who are now sort of getting into college or just about to
yeah,
graduate, there's a lot of
yeah,
interest there in terms of going back to giving back to society and not living a very um,
yeah,
or how would I put it, a wasteful kind of a life and things
yeah.
like that. Do you see that kind of a trend in place already? Do you see younger people turning more towards
Yeah,
environmental
yeah,
issues and other issues now compared to, let's say, what it was 10 years ago?
yeah. We are also living in different times, in fact, in a globalized world. But I believe, and that in my experience also, um, that there is no dearth of idealism among students and in this generation. So this is my experience. Here in Manipal itself, the last 5 years, we have been running this Gandhian certificate program. And in engineering college, we have offered this program. And every batch, of course, it is an optional subject for them. And nearly 60 to 70 students have opted this course
Okay.
every semester, every alternate semester. And in fact, social work is integral to this course. Social work is integral to this course. And students have enjoyed engaging themselves in social work. Many of them, they have come back to me and said it has been the excellent experience of my life. This course has been an excellent experience of my life, they have said. Primarily because of social work, social service. So there's no dearth of idealism among students in this generation.
Hmm.
So only thing we need to give them right, right. We need to show right activities, so with which they can express themselves, and I'm certain that these two programs, which we have offered now, two postgraduate programs, MA in Ecosophical Aesthetics and MA in Peace Studies, Art and Peace Studies. So they would certainly give them a platform to express themselves, and they have a way for their ideals.
Uh-huh. But, sir, if you look at it that way, if I mean,
Yeah,
a student who comes in to take this course, once he completes it,
yeah,
what kind
yeah,
of a sort of a
yeah,
employment opportunity can he or she expect once they're done with it? And if you could, normally, I mean, people would say academics or NGOs and things like that. But are there any unusual areas where they could provide expertise or could provide some kind of inputs?
yeah. True. Spirit of the Gandhian center, uh, that everyone needs to be employed, everyone needs to work. It is Gandhian spirit also. In fact, Gandhi doesn't want everyone to be unemployed, everyone to
Hmm.
work. And here, um, there are different possibilities. Our primary purpose, that we need to use in different areas of knowledge. So they need to develop certain expertise in different forms of arts, from a perspective. They need to develop expertise on different social sciences from ecosophical perspective. So that's our basic purpose. And once they develop this expertise, they should be able to do many jobs. They should be able to write, they should be able to express themselves on these areas. Uh, and journalism, media, and communication. So that provides one of the major avenues for getting themselves employed. And so they can get into this industry. And as I mentioned, there is a serious dearth of art critics, art writers in media industry, and certainly they can fill up this gap. And our focus is primarily to prepare them to fulfill this need. At the same time, they can carry on research on these areas. So this is a limitless possibility, and they can get into teaching. they can get into policy research, because our belief is today all our policies need to be shaped from philosophical perspective, from Gandhian perspective, so that there could be some possibility of change in the world. So students can majorly get into different policy research organizations. So that if, there are many possibilities, and really, if they can write well, if they can express well, and if they develop expertise in different forms of art, appreciation, in critical appreciation of different forms of arts. In such case, they can majorly get into the media industry.
I see. Sir, but what you just told me was that media, maybe academics, NGOs, these are the
Yeah.
main kind of areas in which somebody who does this course would sort of excel in. But I was trying to understand. I mean, for instance, could Gandhian's principles be used to, let's say,
Okay.
develop a 5-year plan for India or something like that? That kind of a thing. Would you think it would be relevant?
Okay. Absolutely yes. Because uh, so today we are living in post COVID-19, post Corona world, and today everyone is speaking a different language. Today, once again, we are talking in terms of interdependent world. We are speaking in terms of redefining our economics, and I think this once again makes Gandhi much more relevant. Today, all policies will have to be redefined from a different perspective, from an international perspective, from a perspective which focuses on strengthening our economy in a different way. So I think Gandhi, in this case, provides excellent insights, primarily to redefine and reshape our world, to redefine our policies.
Hmm. That's I mean, a very interesting kind of a aspect that you put out, sir. Before we end this program, let
Yeah,
me just ask you, if you were to sort of you know address students or others who might be interested in taking up this course,
yeah,
what would be the 3 things or 4 things that you would want to tell them so that that they would get inspired enough to come and join you?
yeah. First of all, you can take a look at what we have been offering, different kind of courses, because that gives them all the details. So they would essentially learn in terms of ecosophical aesthetics. They would learn appreciation, critical appreciation of different art forms such as music, theater, dance, cinema, visual arts, uh, from ecosophical perspective, and ecosophy combines ecology and philosophy. And MA in Art and Peace Studies that focuses more on social sciences and international relations, international peace, is the development studies, society and polity, etc. So let them study what they've been taught, so they do develop certain expertise in these areas. And of course, uh, during the course of the program, they should be able to hone certain skills of writing, expressing themselves, express the ideas are concerned. At the same time, also provides the platform for those who are looking beyond themselves. So often accuse of this new world as very self-centric, but there are plenty of exceptions, and I have seen this realism among my students. And these programs also provide an excellent opportunity for those who intend to do something for society, those who intend to go beyond themselves and help others. And in sense, sarvodaya, well-being of everyone. So that is the philosophical basis of this programs and our development. And in fact, roots are open, and certainly can make use of this opportunity, uh, make uh, life better for themselves and better for everyone.
Wonderful. So thank you so very much, Professor Varadesh. We have run out of time, and I'm truly grateful to you for having given us some time to, at least ponder over Gandhi and what we can study about him. That was Professor Varadesh Hiregange, and
Thank you.
this is Ramananda Sengupta signing out for now. Thank you.